The sound of bouncing basketballs and squeaking sneakers had just faded away as Marcus, Devon, and Jamal stepped out of the community center on Detroit's east side. The autumn sky had turned dark gray, threatening to pour at any moment. The three 16-year-old boys had been best friends since elementary school, bonded by their love for basketball and their shared dreams of making it big someday. Marcus, the tallest of the three, pulled his hoodie over his head as the first drops of rain began to fall. He was known in the neighborhood as the responsible one, always looking out for others and fixing things. His father, a mechanic, had taught him everything about cars since he was young enough to hold a wrench. Devon walked in the middle, his bright red basketball tucked under his arm. He was the comedian of the group, always ready with a joke to lighten any situation. Despite his playful nature, he had a sharp mind and was top of their class in mathematics. Jamal, slightly shorter than his friends but built like a football player, walked on the other side. He was the practical one, always thinking 3 steps ahead and making sure they stayed out of trouble in their sometimes rough neighborhood. "Man, Coach Williams really worked us hard today," Devon complained, rubbing his shoulder. "My arms feel like they're gonna fall off." "That's because you spend half the practice trying to show off your new moves instead of doing the drills properly," Jamal teased, dodging a playful punch from Devon. Marcus laughed at his friend's antics, but his attention was suddenly drawn to something unusual up ahead. Through the increasing rainfall, he spotted a luxury car, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, pulled over on the side of Jefferson Avenue. The car stood out like a sore thumb in their neighborhood, where most people drove used cars or took the bus. "Hey, guys, look at that," Marcus said, pointing toward the expensive vehicle. As they got closer, they could see an elderly white man in an expensive suit, standing beside the car with a frustrated expression on his face. He was holding an umbrella in one hand and a phone in the other, looking completely out of place. "Looks like he's got a flat," Marcus observed, noticing the car's awkward tilt to one side. "We should see if he needs help." Devon and Jamal exchanged glances. They had been taught to be careful around strangers, especially in situations that seemed unusual, but they also knew Marcus was right. It wasn't safe for anyone to be stranded in their neighborhood as it was getting dark. "Are you sure, man?" Jamal asked, always the cautious one. "That car probably costs more than all our houses combined." "My dad always says that helping others is what makes a community strong," Marcus replied, already walking toward the stranded vehicle. His friends followed, sharing his sentiment but still slightly nervous. The rain was coming down harder now, and the elderly man looked up as the 3 teenagers approached. They could see a flash of uncertainty cross his face, and his hand tightened slightly on his phone. The boys had experienced these kinds of reactions before and knew how to handle them. Marcus raised his hand in a friendly wave and called out, "Excuse me, sir. We noticed you have a flat tire. Would you like some help?" The man hesitated for a moment, studying the 3 young men before him. They were still in their basketball practice clothes. Marcus in his gray hoodie, Devon wearing his favorite Bulls jersey under a light jacket, and Jamal in his school-team shirt. Despite their casual appearance, their sincere expressions and polite approach seemed to put him at ease. "Oh, yes," the man finally responded, his voice carrying a slight British accent. "I've been trying to contact my driver, but he's stuck in traffic on the other side of town. I must admit, I'm not very experienced with this sort of situation." "No worries, sir," Marcus said confidently. "I help my dad fix cars all the time. We can change that tire for you in no time." He turned to his friends. "Devon, Jamal, you guys mind helping out?" "Of course not," they responded almost in unison, already moving toward the car. The rain continued to fall steadily as the 3 friends prepared to help the mysterious wealthy man, not knowing that this simple act of kindness was about to change their lives forever. They were just doing what their parents had taught them, helping someone in need, regardless of who they were or what they looked like. The rain showed no signs of letting up as Marcus took charge of the situation. He politely asked the elderly man to open the trunk of his Rolls-Royce, where they found a spare tire and a high-end car jack that looked like it had never been used. The man introduced himself as Thomas Richardson while watching the boys with growing interest. "Devon, could you hold the umbrella for Mr. Richardson?" Marcus asked, not wanting the elderly man to get soaked. "Jamal, help me with the jack." The boys moved with purpose, each taking their assigned roles without complaint despite being drenched themselves. As Marcus began setting up the jack, Mr. Richardson cleared his throat, I must say, I'm quite impressed by your organization. Have you done this before? Yes, sir, Marcus replied, carefully positioning the jack under the car's frame. My dad owns Johnson's Auto Repair on East Warren Avenue. I've been helping him since I was little. He paused to wipe the rain from his eyes. Jamal, can you grab the lug wrench? Mr. Richardson watched in amazement as the three teenagers worked together seamlessly. Devon, while holding the umbrella, kept the mood light with his jokes. Hey, Mr. Richardson, what did the tire say to the road? He grinned. Nice to meet you. I really like you. The elderly man couldn't help but chuckle, his earlier apprehension completely forgotten. He noticed how Jamal anticipated Marcus's needs, handing him tools before being asked, while Devon made sure everyone stayed in good spirits despite the miserable weather. You know, Mr. Richardson said, I have a roadside assistance service I could have called, but they estimated a 2-hour wait. He shook his head. I was beginning to worry about missing my meeting. No one should have to wait that long in the rain, sir, Jamal replied respectfully. Besides, it's not safe to be stranded around here after dark. As they worked, Mr. Richardson learned more about the boys. Devon shared their dreams of going to college, though he admitted the costs seemed overwhelming. Jamal talked about their basketball team and how they practiced extra hours hoping to earn sports scholarships. Marcus remained focused on the tire but occasionally added to the conversation, mentioning how his father had taught him the value of honest work. The job wasn't without its challenges. The lug nuts were extremely tight, requiring all three boys to work together to loosen them. When they finally got the flat tire off, they discovered it had been punctured by a large nail. That's some bad luck, sir, Marcus said, examining the damage. But the spare will get you where you need to go. Just don't drive too fast on it. Mr. Richardson nodded, clearly impressed by Marcus's knowledge. He reached for his wallet. Please, let me compensate you for your time and effort. You've saved my evening. The three friends exchanged glances before Marcus spoke up. No thank you, sir. We didn't help you for money. Our parents taught us that helping others is just the right thing to do. Yeah, Devon added with a smile. Consider it our contribution to making the world a little better. Mr. Richardson seemed stunned by their refusal. He looked at each boy in turn, noting their soaped clothes and genuine smiles. Young men, your parents must be very proud. This kind of integrity is rare these days. After ensuring the spare tire was properly secured, the boys helped clean up the tools and return them to the trunk. Mr. Richardson insisted on taking their names and the name of their school, saying he wanted to write a letter to their parents about their son's kindness. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, the three friends started their walk home, not realizing they were being watched through the car's rearview mirror. Mr. Richardson pulled out his phone and made a call. James, he said to his assistant, cancel my remaining meetings for today. I need you to gather some information for me about 3 remarkable young men I just met. And send a car to my location. There's something I need to check personally. The boys continued their walk home, soaked but satisfied with helping someone in need. They had no idea that their simple act of kindness had set in motion events that would transform not only their lives but their entire community. Later that evening, Marcus, Devon, and Jamal sat in Marcus's living room, their wet clothes replaced with dry ones they kept at each other's houses for sleepover emergencies. Mrs. Johnson, Marcus's mother, had insisted the boys stay for dinner after hearing about their good deed in the rain. The smell of her famous chicken pot pie filled the house as they worked on their homework. I still can't believe we helped fix a flat tire on a Rolls-Royce, Devon said, looking up from his math textbook. Did you see the interior through the window? Those seats probably cost more than my whole house. Jamal nodded while typing on his laptop. What I can't believe is that a billionaire was just stranded in our neighborhood. I looked him up. Thomas Richardson is the CEO of Rick Tech Solutions. The company's worth billions. Marcus's father, Robert Johnson, walked into the living room, wiping his hands on a shop towel. He had just finished closing up his auto repair shop for the day. You boys did good today, he said with pride. It's not about who you're helping or what they're worth. It's about doing the right thing. That's exactly what we told Mr. Richardson when he tried to pay us. Marcus replied, smiling at his father. The older man nodded approvingly. Mrs. Johnson called them all to dinner, and as they gathered around the table, conversation continued. The boys described every detail of their encounter, from the expensive suit Mr. Richardson wore to the high-tech tools in his car's trunk. He seemed really surprised that we didn't want any money, Devon commented, helping himself to a second serving of pot pie. Sometimes the richest people aren't used to genuine kindness, Mrs. Johnson observed wisely. They're often surrounded by people who want something from them. Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. His eyes widened as he read the screen. Guys, look at this. Mr. Richardson just announced that his company is planning to open a new tech center in Detroit. They're talking about bringing thousands of jobs to the city. That's great news for the community, Mr. Johnson said. This area could use more good jobs. As the evening wore on, the boys finished their homework and set up their usual sleeping bags in Marcus's room. They had been having Friday night sleepovers since middle school, taking turns at each other's houses. It was their tradition to stay up late talking about their dreams and plans for the future. You know what? Jamal said, staring at the ceiling. Meeting Mr. Richardson made me realize something. Success isn't just about having money. Did you notice how he treated us with respect once he saw we were there to help? Devon propped himself up on his elbow. Yeah, and he actually listened when we talked about our families and school. Most rich people wouldn't care about kids from this neighborhood. Marcus was quiet for a moment before speaking. Maybe that's why he's successful. My dad always says that treating people right is just as important as being good at business. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of Marcus's phone ringing. It was his father calling from downstairs, his voice unusually excited. Marcus, come down here. All three of you boys need to see this. The teenagers hurried downstairs to find Mr. and Mrs. Johnson staring at their laptop screen. On it was an email from Thomas Richardson's office, thanking the boys for their help and requesting a meeting with them and their families the following morning. It says he wants to discuss an opportunity that could benefit both the boys and the community. Mrs. Johnson read aloud, her voice trembling slightly. The three friends looked at each other, a mix of excitement and nervousness on their faces. None of them could have imagined that changing a flat tire would lead to this moment. Whatever happens tomorrow, Mr. Johnson said, looking at each boy in turn, remember that you earned this opportunity through your character and willingness to help others. That's something money can't buy. As they headed back upstairs, the boys were too excited to sleep. They spent hours speculating about what Mr. Richardson might want to discuss, their minds filled with possibilities. Little did they know, their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't imagine, all because they chose to help a stranger in the rain. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to yesterday's rain. The Johnson household was already buzzing with activity by 7 a.m. Mrs. Johnson had woken up early to prepare a special breakfast, while the three boys took turns showering and getting dressed in their best clothes. Mom, have you seen my blue tie? Marcus called down the stairs, frantically searching through his closet. The one Grandma gave me for graduation. It's hanging on the laundry room door, honey, she replied, flipping another batch of pancakes. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the house. Devon stood in front of the hallway mirror, attempting to tie his own tie for the third time. His hands were shaking slightly from nervousness. Man, I wish my parents could be here, he said. Both his mother and father worked early morning shifts and couldn't get time off on such short notice. Don't worry, Mr. Johnson assured him, stepping in to help with the tie. We recorded a video call with them last night, and Mr. Richardson's office said they can join the meeting virtually. Jamal sat at the kitchen table, already dressed in his church suit, typing on his phone. My mom's on her way, he announced. She got someone to cover her nursing shift. Just as Mrs. Johnson was setting the last plate of pancakes on the table, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside their house. The boys rushed to the window, their breakfast forgotten. Two men in dark suits stepped out and approached the front door. The doorbell rang, causing everyone to freeze for a moment. Mr. Johnson straightened his tie and went to answer it. Good morning, the taller of the two men said, showing an ID badge. I'm James Peterson, Mr. Richardson's executive assistant, and this is Michael Torres, head of security. We're here to escort you to the meeting. Mrs. Johnson invited them in, offering coffee which they politely declined. James Peterson looked around at the nervous faces and smiled warmly. Please, everyone relax, he said. Mr. Richardson was very impressed by your sons yesterday. He's looking forward to meeting everyone properly. Michael Torres spoke up, his voice surprisingly gentle for such a large man. We have 2 vehicles waiting. The boys and Mr. and Mrs. Johnson can ride in the first car, and we'll wait for Mrs. Williams to arrive to take her in the second car." As if on cue, Jamal's mother's car pulled up outside. She hurried in, already dressed in her best outfit, having changed at the hospital before leaving. The next few minutes were a blur of activity as everyone gathered their things and headed out to the vehicles. The boys couldn't help but stare at the luxurious SUVs. They were even nicer than Mr. Richardson's car from yesterday. Inside the first SUV, the leather seats were soft and comfortable, and there was a small refrigerator stocked with water and sodas. Devon whistled low under his breath. "This is like something out of a movie," he whispered to Marcus, who nodded in agreement. As they drove through the city, James Peterson explained that they were heading to the Renaissance Center, where Mr. Richardson had his Detroit offices. The boys watched through tinted windows as their familiar neighborhood streets gave way to the gleaming downtown buildings. "Mr. Richardson has cleared his entire morning schedule for this meeting," James continued. He was quite insistent about that. Mrs. Johnson squeezed Marcus's hand. "Whatever happens, we're proud of you boys," she said softly. The SUVs pulled into an underground parking garage, where they were met by more security personnel. As they stepped out of the vehicles, the boys could feel their hearts pounding. Everything felt surreal. The elegant surroundings, the professional security team, the important-looking people hurrying past them in business attire. They were led to a private elevator, which shot up smoothly to the top floor. The doors opened to reveal a stunning view of the Detroit River through floor-to-ceiling windows. A receptionist greeted them with a warm smile and gestured toward a large conference room. "Mr. Richardson will be with you shortly," James announced, opening the door for them. As they filed into the impressive room, the 3 friends exchanged glances. Just 24 hours ago, they had been playing basketball at their community center. Now they were about to meet with one of the country's most successful businessmen. Whatever was about to happen, they knew their lives would never be the same. The conference room was unlike anything the boys had ever seen. A long mahogany table dominated the space, and the Detroit skyline stretched out behind a massive window. Fresh fruit, pastries, and coffee had been arranged at one end of the table, though everyone was too nervous to eat. The wait wasn't long. Within minutes, Thomas Richardson walked in, dressed in a perfectly tailored gray suit. He looked different from yesterday, more polished and professional, but his warm smile was the same. Behind him came several people carrying laptops and folders. "Good morning, everyone," Mr. Richardson said cheerfully. "I hope those cars I sent were comfortable. Marcus, Devon, Jamal. Good to see you again under drier circumstances." The boy smiled nervously as Mr. Richardson shook hands with each parent. He then gestured for everyone to sit down, taking his place at the head of the table. Devon's parents appeared on a large screen mounted on the wall, connected through video call. "First," Mr. Richardson began, "I want to tell your parents what remarkable young men they've raised. Yesterday, when my car got a flat tire in an unfamiliar neighborhood, these 3 boys didn't hesitate to help a complete stranger. They worked efficiently, refused payment, and showed exceptional character." The parents beamed with pride as Mr. Richardson continued. "But what truly impressed me was our conversation during the tire change. I learned about their dreams, their dedication to education, and their desire to make their community better." He paused, opening a folder in front of him. "That's why I've asked you here today. My company, Rich Tech Solutions, is launching a new initiative called the Future Leaders Program. We're looking for young people who demonstrate not just academic potential, but also strong character and community values." The room was silent as Mr. Richardson pressed a button, and images appeared on the screen. "We're building a new tech center here in Detroit, as you might have heard. But we're also creating a scholarship program for promising students. This program will cover full college tuition, including books and housing, at any university the student chooses to attend." Mrs. Johnson gasped softly, grabbing her husband's hand. The boys sat frozen in their chairs, hardly daring to breathe. Furthermore, Mr. Richardson continued, "The program includes paid summer internships at RICTech, mentoring from our top executives, and guaranteed job offers upon graduation if they maintain good academic standing." He turned to face the 3 friends directly. "Marcus, Devon, Jamal, I would like to offer each of you a place in this program. Your actions yesterday proved you have exactly the kind of character we're looking for." Tears were flowing freely now. Mrs. Williams was hugging Jamal. Devon's parents were cheering through the video call, and the Johnsons were trying to maintain their composure and failing. But Mr. Richardson wasn't finished. "There's more," he said, pulling out more documents. "We've reviewed the resumes your parents provided. Mr. Johnson, we'd like to partner with your auto repair shop to service our company vehicles. Mrs. Williams, our medical technology division has a nursing leadership position that would be perfect for your experience. And Devon's parents, we have positions in our administrative and security departments that match your backgrounds." The room erupted in emotion. Dreams that had seemed impossible just yesterday were suddenly becoming reality. Marcus, Devon, and Jamal looked at each other in disbelief, their eyes wide with shock and joy. "Sir," Marcus finally managed to say, his voice shaking slightly, "this is incredible. But why us?" Mr. Richardson's expression grew serious. "Because you three represent everything we need in future leaders. You showed integrity, teamwork, and kindness without expecting anything in return. You demonstrated skills and knowledge but remained humble. Most importantly, you showed concern for your community." He stood up, looking at each person in the room. "This isn't charity, it's an investment. An investment in 3 young men who I believe will help shape the future of this city and maybe even this country." As the meeting continued with discussions of details and paperwork, the 3 friends sat in stunned silence. Their simple act of helping someone in need had opened a door they never knew existed. Their dreams of college, which had seemed so distant just yesterday, were now within reach. But more than that, they had the chance to make a real difference in their community. The rain from yesterday had indeed brought something unexpected. Not just a stranded billionaire, but an opportunity that would change not only their lives but the lives of many others in their community. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity for the 3 families. Mr. Richardson's team worked quickly to put their promises into action. The Johnsons' auto repair shop was already being renovated with state-of-the-art equipment, while Mrs. Williams had started her new position at Richtech's medical division. Devon's parents had both begun their training at the company's downtown office. At school, Marcus, Devon, and Jamal became minor celebrities after the local news ran a story about their encounter with Mr. Richardson. Their basketball coach, Mr. Williams, used their story as an example during practice. "See what happens when you work as a team and do the right thing?" he said to the squad. These 3 showed that character matters more than anything else. One morning, during their usual walk to school, the boys noticed construction crews breaking ground at an empty lot near their neighborhood. Large signs announced the future site of the Richtech Community Technology Center. "Can you believe all this started with a flat tire?" Devon asked, adjusting his backpack. He had traded his old worn-out bag for a new one, a gift from his parents after receiving their first paychecks from Richtech. "My mom says it wasn't just about the tire," Jamal replied. "She says Mr. Richardson saw something in us that we didn't even see in ourselves." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "You know what's really cool? The way he's helping our whole community, not just us. Dad says the auto shop is already getting more business because of the Richtech partnership." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mr. Peterson, Mr. Richardson's assistant, who had become a familiar face over the past weeks. He was waiting in front of the school in his now recognizable black SUV. "Good morning, boys," he called out. "Mr. Richardson would like you to join him for lunch today. He wants to discuss your roles in the summer internship program." The school principal had been notified, and their afternoon classes would be excused. As they rode downtown in the comfortable SUV, Mr. Peterson briefed them on what to expect. "The internship program is designed to give you real-world experience," he explained. "Each of you will be assigned to different departments based on your interests and strengths." The meeting took place in a casual setting this time, a private dining room at one of Detroit's finest restaurants. Mr. Richardson was already there, dressed more casually than their last meeting, wearing a sweater instead of his usual suit. "Ah, here are my future executives," he greeted them warmly. After they ordered lunch, he got straight to business. "Marcus," he began, "given your mechanical knowledge and leadership skills, we'd like you to work with our engineering team. They're developing new electric vehicle technology." Marcus's eyes lit up. His father had recently started learning about electric cars to prepare for servicing Richtech's fleet. "Devon," Mr. Richardson continued, Your math skills and creative thinking would be perfect for our financial technology division. They're working on making banking more accessible to underserved communities." Devin sat up straighter, already excited about the possibility. "And Jamal," Mr. Richardson smiled, "your practical nature and strategic thinking make you ideal for our community development team. They're planning more projects like the Technology Center." As they ate, Mr. Richardson shared more details about the summer program. They would each have mentors, attend leadership workshops, and participate in community service projects. "But here's what I really wanted to discuss," he said, becoming serious. "I don't just want you to work for Richtech. I want you to help shape its future. The perspective you bring from your community is valuable." He explained how their input would help guide the company's community initiatives. They would be part of a youth advisory board, giving voice to the needs and ideas of young people in their neighborhood. "This isn't just about giving you opportunities," Mr. Richardson explained. "It's about creating a pipeline of talent from communities that have been overlooked for too long." As the boys listened, they felt the weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders. This was bigger than just their individual success. They had the chance to help open doors for others. "Remember," Mr. Richardson said as the meeting concluded, "that rainy day showed me your potential. Now it's time to show everyone else what you can do." The boys left the restaurant that day with full hearts and clear purposes. Their lives had changed dramatically, but they were determined to use this opportunity to help others, just as they had helped a stranger with a flat tire on that fateful rainy afternoon. 5 years passed quickly, bringing remarkable changes to both the young men and their community. The Richtech Community Technology Center had become a bustling hub of activity, offering free computer classes, coding workshops, and job training programs to neighborhood residents. Marcus, Devon, and Jamal were now in their final year of college, each excelling in their chosen fields. They had spent every summer interning at Richtech, gaining valuable experience and building strong networks. Their success had inspired many other young people in their community to pursue their dreams. Marcus was completing his mechanical engineering degree at MIT, where his innovative ideas for electric vehicle systems had already earned him recognition. During his internships, he had helped develop a more efficient charging system that made electric cars more accessible to average families. "Your father would be so proud," Mrs. Johnson told Marcus during one of their weekly video calls. Robert Johnson had passed away the previous year, but not before seeing his auto repair shop become one of Detroit's leading electric vehicle service centers. Devin was finishing his finance degree at Stanford, where he had developed a mobile banking app specifically designed for underserved communities. The app had been tested in their old neighborhood and was now being rolled out nationwide through Richtech's banking division. Jamal was at Harvard, majoring in urban development and social policy. His community development initiatives during his summer internships had led to the creation of several more technology centers in other Detroit neighborhoods. One warm spring afternoon, the three friends reunited in Detroit for a special ceremony. The community center where they used to play basketball was being renamed the Johnson Youth Development Center in honor of Marcus's father. "It's amazing how different everything looks now," Devin remarked as they walked through their old neighborhood. New businesses had opened, houses were being renovated, and the streets were alive with activity. "Different, but still home," Jamal replied, waving to some kids playing basketball on the court where they used to practice. Mr. Richardson was waiting for them at the ceremony. Now in his 70s, he had gradually stepped back from day-to-day operations at Richtech, but remained actively involved in the community programs he had started. "My three future leaders," he greeted them warmly. "Ready to share your big news?" The boys exchanged excited glances. They had been working on a secret project for months, and today they would finally announce it publicly. The ceremony began with the unveiling of the new sign at the community center. Mrs. Johnson cut the ribbon, tears in her eyes as she saw her late husband's name displayed prominently. Then it was time for the boys to speak. Marcus stepped up to the microphone first. "5 years ago, 3 teenagers helped a stranger with a flat tire," he began. "That simple act of kindness changed our lives. But more importantly, it showed us the power of giving back to our community." Devin took over. "Today, we're excited to announce the creation of the Future Leaders Foundation. With support from Richtech and Mr. Richardson, we're establishing a program to provide scholarships, mentoring, and opportunities to young people in communities like ours." Jamal concluded, the foundation will focus on technology education, entrepreneurship training, and community development. We want to create the same kind of opportunities that we were given, but on a larger scale. The crowd erupted in applause. Mr. Richardson beamed with pride as he watched his protégés share their vision. After the ceremony, the three friends sat on their old basketball court, reflecting on their journey. Remember when we thought getting into college was just a dream? Devin asked, bouncing a basketball absently. Now we're about to graduate from top universities and start our own foundation, Marcus said, shaking his head in amazement. But the best part, Jamal added, is that we're doing it together, and we're doing it for our community. As the sun set over Detroit, casting long shadows across the basketball court, the three friends looked toward the future with confidence. They had learned that success wasn't just about individual achievement, it was about lifting others up along the way. Their story had become legend in the neighborhood, told and retold to inspire young people. How three black boys helped a billionaire with a flat tire, and in doing so, helped change their community forever. But they knew their journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. There were more lives to touch, more dreams to fulfill, and more communities to transform. 10 years after that rainy day with the flat tire, Marcus, Devon, and Jamal stood on the stage of the newly built Rick Tech Arena in downtown Detroit. The massive auditorium was filled with over 1,000 students, parents, and community members for the Future Leaders Foundation's annual scholarship ceremony. When we were teenagers, Marcus began, his voice carrying across the silent audience. We thought success meant leaving our neighborhood behind. But Mr. Richardson taught us that true success means bringing others along with you. The Future Leaders Foundation had grown beyond their wildest dreams. What started as a small scholarship program had expanded into a nationwide initiative, helping thousands of young people from underserved communities pursue their dreams. Devon, now a successful fintech entrepreneur, stepped forward to announce this year's numbers. Today, we're awarding scholarships to 200 students from across the country. But more than that, we're welcoming them into a family that will support them every step of the way. Jamal, who had become a leading voice in urban development, added, and thanks to our partnership with 50 major companies, every scholar will have internship opportunities and job guarantees upon graduation. In the front row, an elderly Mr. Richardson watched with tears in his eyes. At 80 years old, he had lived to see his investment in 3 young men multiply beyond measure. Next to him sat Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Williams, both now retired but still active in foundation activities. After the ceremony, as the new scholars and their families celebrated, the three friends gathered in their private office at the arena. The walls were covered with photographs documenting their journey, the original newspaper article about the flat tire, their college graduations, the opening of various community centers, and countless success stories of their scholarship recipients. Did you ever imagine this? Devin asked, looking at a photo of their first scholarship ceremony where they had helped just 10 students. Not in my wildest dreams, Marcus replied. His father's auto repair shop had grown into a chain of electric vehicle service centers, all staffed by graduates of their training programs. Jamal walked to the window, looking out at the transformed Detroit skyline. You know what makes me proudest? When I see our scholars helping others, just like we did that day. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. It was James Peterson, Mr. Richardson's longtime assistant, now semi-retired but still involved with the foundation. Mr. Richardson would like to see you, he announced with a smile. He has something important to discuss. In Mr. Richardson's private office, the elderly businessman sat behind his desk, looking tired but happy. My boys, he said warmly, I think it's time. The three friends knew what he meant. They had been preparing for this moment for years. Mr. Richardson was ready to step down as chairman of Rick Tech Solutions, and he had chosen his successors. Marcus will oversee technology and innovation, he announced. Davin will lead our financial divisions, and Jamal will handle community development and corporate responsibility. Together, you'll form the new leadership team of Rick Tech Solutions. The three friends looked at each other, overwhelmed by the trust being placed in them. They had gone from fixing a flat tire to running a multi-billion-dollar company. But remember, Mr. Richardson continued, your most important job will always be the foundation. Keep finding those diamonds in the rough, those young people who just need a chance to shine. Later that evening, the three friends returned to their old neighborhood. The community center was hosting a basketball tournament, and they had promised to attend. As they watched the young players on the court, they saw themselves in every determined face, every ambitious dream. "We've come full circle," Marcus observed, smiling as a young girl made a perfect three-point shot. "But the circle keeps getting bigger," Devon added, thinking of all the lives they touched. "And that's exactly how it should be," Jamal concluded. As they sat in their old spots on the bleachers, they reflected on their incredible journey. From three teenagers helping a stranded billionaire to leaders of a movement that was changing lives across the country, they had never forgotten their roots or their purpose. The story of three black boys helping a billionaire with a flat tire had become more than just a tale of kindness rewarded. It had become a blueprint for community transformation, a reminder that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness. And somewhere in Detroit that night, perhaps another group of teenagers was making a choice to help someone in need, not knowing that their simple act of kindness might just change the world.